Welcome to Ghoul Talk.
Hey everyone, my name is Chris A. and welcome to Ghoul Talk. Ghoul Talk is a quick and hopefully digestible way to demystify and just kind of talk about some of these politically loaded catchphrases, talking points, things that are on everyone's mind but no one seems to know what they mean. This is not meant to be a deep dive of any of the topics. If you are interested in that kind of thing, I'm sure there are plenty of resources on YouTube and elsewhere on the internet. That's not what this is. But if you're looking for a jumping off point, this is Ghoul Talk. This is actually the third Ghoul Talk that I've recorded this week. And the second time that I've recorded a big tech Ghoul Talk because stuff keeps happening. Obviously, with the events that happened this week, and the kind of fallout that we saw from big tech, I thought I'd go ahead and clarify a couple things. When we talk about big tech, we're talking about companies like Twitter, Google, Apple, Facebook, even Amazon. These big tech corporations that have quite a lot of control over services, software, and products. Obviously, this is probably not the first time you're hearing it, but Twitter has taken the unprecedented step of permanently suspending Donald Trump, who at the time of recording is still a US president, although will not be for at most like 10 days at this point. First off, if you have concerns that there are big implications to a corporation deciding to ban a world leader from its platform, yes, this has huge implications. But there are also huge implications to allowing Trump to continue to tweet unchecked. We know that this week he incited an attack on Congress. I think it's important to put it in those terms, that the President of the United States basically encouraged his followers to violently attack the Congress of the United States and, for that matter, the Vice President. I think it's important to think of it in those terms. That's really what I want to focus on is, yes, it is a big deal for Twitter to ban Trump. But because of Trump's speech, including that on Twitter, 5 people are now dead, including a Capitol police officer. And we've also seen, Twitter has come out and said they've seen people organizing both on Twitter and off Twitter for another attack on January 17th, which is a couple days before the inauguration. And then, of course, we are expecting a lot of violence. If you're not expecting it now, here I'm telling you, there will be a lot of violence around and during the inauguration. A lot of violence. And I'm not saying this as someone who is paranoid. I'm saying this as someone who is even a little bit tuned into what the MAGA folks are talking about. There are plenty of instances of them calling for outright violence on forums like 4chan and Parler and even Twitter. And that's why we're seeing a lot of these services get shut down. And I think it's important to understand who is doing the shutting down. When Twitter bans Trump, it is their right to do that as a private corporation, full stop. There are implications to that, certainly, but they are making the decision as a private corporation that is publicly traded that supporting or allowing Trump to be on their platform is bad for them or bad for someone else. Full stop. That's it. That's their decision. Now it gets a little trickier with things like Parler. So Parler was removed from the App Store, the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store. So it's not that Parler is kicking people off. It's that these bigger platforms are kicking Parler off. Again, totally their right to do it. They are both private corporations. There are implications to that, and that's a discussion we need to have. But as we stand, they can do it. And then there's even, we saw like the email server provider for Donald Trump's campaign team has now said they can no longer send emails. Again, they own the servers, they own whatever. It's their right to do that. A lot of times we hear, well, if you don't like it, leave and make your own Twitter. And that's kind of what Parler was. And I saw someone the other day say, yesterday, this all happened yesterday, I saw someone say, they told us to make our own Twitter, so we did that, and then big tech shut us down. Well, then make your own big tech. Like, I know it's an imperfect system. Obviously, I talk about how much I hate capitalism all the time, but that is the system we have. And if Apple is taking your app off the iPhone, make your own iPhone. Like, the responsibility is on you. If you are that desperate for a forum where you can call for violence against members of the United States government, make your own platform and app store and phone. And I mean, the reality is that when there are all these layers, you're going to have to answer to the hardware folks, the software folks, the servers, the domain holders. There are a lot of people that have to allow your service to be out there because we do live in an interdependent economy. I also want to talk about the use of the expression Orwellian to describe what is happening. No, this is so off base to the fact that it's becoming a joke that clearly no one on the right has ever read 1984, because 1984 was not about a private company saying, oh, we can't sell you anything, so get out. Like, that's not what 1984 was. I think it's also important to talk about, we have to understand the alternative is, if you're saying that Twitter should not have the power to ban a sitting president, what you are saying is that Twitter, a private corporation, has to allow the United States government a platform. That's super dangerous. That is Orwellian. The idea that no matter what the president says, he is guaranteed a platform. I also want to talk about that. Like, he's the president. You cannot silence the president of the United States. If he needs to say something, he will hold a press conference. He has plenty of powerful people he can call. He can call journalists. He can do all of this stuff. It's taking a social media account away from him. Well, several. But it's certainly not silencing him. Like I mentioned, there are huge implications to Twitter being able to do this. There's often this myth that big tech has a kind of a left-leaning bias. And I think there's some truth to that, but we also need to recognize that it took Twitter 4 years and the fact that Trump lost the election to actually start fact-checking, to actually start suspending. Trump got away with a lot that civilians would not have been able to get away with on Twitter. And again, that kind of set the precedent that the president is exempt from certain rules, which I think is more dangerous than allowing the rules to apply equally to the president. That's what I'm in favor of. But the reason they're able to do this is because they are a private corporation. So this is a different discussion, but I think it's one we need to have. Twitter is now such a big company and so consequential that I think it's time to start having the conversation that we treat it as a public utility. And if we treat it as a public utility and we, hold on, you're going to love this, we apply socialism, so we give the power of Twitter to the people, which at this point, probably the most effective way to do that would be to nationalize Twitter, and then create commissions, assign elected officials so that it is at least in some way controlled by the people. So if we did that, if we nationalized Twitter and treated it as a public utility that everyone has access to, then we're able to have the First Amendment conversation. Because then if it's a publicly owned utility and you're kicked off, then there's a First Amendment violation. The First Amendment doesn't guarantee you service from any private corporation, but it does guarantee that the government can't take away your right to free speech. And again, I'm not saying like this is the answer, but I'm saying this is the conversation we want to start having, where the internet should be a public utility, Twitter should be a public utility. These services that are so big and so consequential and can provide a lot of good to the public should be controlled by the people. Is that fair? I think so. So I'm going to wrap up. Big tech their hands are not clean. Facebook is complicit in plenty of war crimes in Africa specifically. Twitter and Facebook and Parler and all these groups have allowed for their platform to be used for organizing for violence in a way that we saw earlier this week when Trump supporters attacked the U.S. Capitol. I don't think that these groups are perfect. However, I think saying, okay, you've staged an insurrection, now we're going to kick you off. I think that's fair. In fact, I think it should have happened a long time ago. Thank you for watching. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, share it on Reddit, Discord, follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Patreon, all that good stuff. And I'll see you in a little bit. Bye.